thank you everybody for coming. Tonight we have Rosanne Goodwin, and she's going to talk about bathhouses, public bathing, postcards. So it should be interesting. So take it away, Rosanne.
Okay, most of you don't know me, a few of you know me well, and I'm in San Diego, so I'm a few hours earlier than you all are. You'll probably learn more about me than you'd ever want to know as we get through this. And first of all, I want to thank one friend I've known since I started collecting, and I haven't been collecting for that long. Everyone just assumes I have because I'm kind of the, let's see, Michael Langenstein called me Miss Detroit because I know so much about Detroit Publishing Company.
I don't know. I don't see, you said about Nancy. I don't see anybody named Nancy in the list.
Oh, yeah, it's Nancy Redden. So anyway, many of the postcards I'll be showing you are hers. I didn't realize she had collected bathhouses and pools and plunges, but she does. And when she heard what I was doing, she just kept sending them to me. Many of them are mine. I'd say more than are hers are mine. Mike Langenstein had sent me some other prints that I'll go over when I get to there. This is from Montauk Lake, New York. It's the Plunge, and I just love the structure here. So that's how I selected it for my title slide. And I have no idea where Montauk Lake is. I assume that it's up in the north of
No, it's not in
York.
the north.
Where is it?
It's near New Paltz, New York.
Oh, okay.
Hudson River.
Okay, down, so it's further south. Okay,
Yes.
got it. You know, and I just don't understand what you guys call things, you know, people in New York City call things in the Hudson River Valley area upstate when it's just Hudson River. So it confuses me. But
Everything north of Manhattan is upstate New York.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the way it is.
okay, and I mean, just like Albany, Central New York.
Well,
Well, what do you mean? Fred?
what do you mean? Well, they in Albany say they're in eastern or northeastern New York.
Or the Capital District. Syracuse is central New York.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what they say on TV in Syracuse area, central New York area. Then anything from like the Finger Lakes west, towards Rochester and Buffalo, considered Western New York. Is that sort of how we define it? Genesee River and West is kind of a point where you divide West from Central.
For the most part, you're just going to be looking at pretty pictures. There's only 2 or so slides that have writing on them. And I'm starting here. My undergraduate thesis was on the shift to bathing in the United States, the whole hygiene movement. And I'm starting here at the White House because this really kind of gives a timeline of what was happening at the White House that then kind of moved into general residences around the country. And then later, after the Civil War, when people realized the importance of hygiene, it then had a big shift that way. So Thomas Jefferson added a cistern installed with wooden pipes that descended to 2 water closets. Andrew Jackson had iron pipes installed in the ground floor hallway in 1833 and installed a bathing room in the West Wing. The second floor got plumbing in 1853. 1876, a 2,000-gallon tank was installed in the attic. to supply water throughout the house. First flush toilet installed in 1853 when the second floor got plumbing. There are 35 different bathrooms in the White House, and they are much nicer on the residence floors than the work areas of the first floor. But I think anyone who's worked in an office would not be surprised by that. So here's a little William Howard Taft trivia. And the question is, did 350-pound plus William Howard Taft get stuck in a bathtub? And the answer is no, he did not. Because he had multiple porcelain tubs made, and that held 4 regular-sized men. And he even, when he went down to visit the Panama Canal construction in about 1910 or 11, he had one with him on the ship. In 1913, after Taft left the White House, he moved to a hotel in New Haven, Connecticut, and with an immense tub, was supposedly deep enough that a average sized man could float in when it filled. And then 2 years later, in 1915, while staying in a Cape May, New Jersey hotel, he failed to properly consider the size of the average seashore hotel bathtub, and the water displaced by his tremendous girth flooded the floor and trickled onto the heads of guests in the downstairs dining room. So instead of him getting stuck, actually, he shifted the water out of the tub. There's 2 pictures here, and just if you don't remember, Taft's wife convinced him to run for president. He had wanted to just join the Supreme Court, so he ended up doing both. These are both Detroit's, and the first one is surf bathing at Palm Beach, Florida. And the rope is because so many people can't swim. It was a way to offer something to hold on to. It's not always the safest thing, and especially with ocean waves and all that. In San Diego, along the bay, there was a bayside pool or public bath, and the rope broke. And luckily there weren't a lot of waves because it was in the bay, not the ocean. But it certainly did scare people. From what I've read, it was long before my time. And then the next one down, the one at the bottom, is from Lake George, Silver Bay, Lake George, New York, and it's the bathhouse here, and the bathers with a rope here, over here. Now, here are 3 different bathhouses in 3 adjoining Los Angeles beach towns. And the one on the bottom left, the kind of sepia toned, is Santa Monica, which is the furthest north. And then Ocean Park, which I had always thought was pretty much a part of Santa Monica, is the next town down. And there's actually an amusement park there. And then the next one, which is the saltwater bathing pool in Venice, California. And that's actually like just the other side of Ocean Park. So there's less than 10 miles between them. But during this time period, there were 3 major bathhouses just in one small area. And then a little bit further south, there was yet another one, which I didn't add to the slide. And so this is winter ocean bathing in California. So you could see they're holding on to the rope here. And something tells me that in the Detroit fashion, they added the ship in the water because it looks a little big for the distance to be out at the horizon. And then the other one is those waves really terrify me. Now, I grew up here in San Diego. I'm sure that surfers would just love it. But if you look, those waves touch the bottom of the pier. Now, these are all of Long Beach. A couple of them are mine, and the two on the top are mine. The two on the bottom are from Nancy Redden. And these are from Long Beach, California. And so on this one, this is the bathhouse back here. And this is how people dressed in that time period to go to the beach. This one here there was an amusement park here at Long Beach, and the Plunges right there. In this one here, it's easier to see what the bathhouse looked like. And I did a check of, because a lot of these places would say $75 million bathhouse. And this was, like 1890 to 1900 when a lot of these were built. And I looked it up, and that'd be over $2 billion in today's dollars. And Nancy also sent me this one of the bathhouse by night, which I just think is lovely with all the lights on it. So now back in my neighborhood, actually not, but closer to me, here's the La Jolla Cove bathhouse. And the bathhouse really didn't have a pool in it or anything else. It was merely like the ones on the lakes, where people would go and change. They could rent a suit and shoes and all that. But there's also, these two cards here are the same photograph. One is color, the other one isn't. And the rocks over here were called Alligator Head, and the head washed away in a storm in 1978. And this image here is a photograph I took a year ago, and it doesn't show there's no alligator head there. But that area is now the seal and sea lion birthing area. So if it were birthing time, this was, I'd say, like within a week of being exactly a year ago. So in the fall, these people down on the beach would be asked to leave. So, and this image over here is a Detroit, and you could see the full bathhouse there and the alligator head. And this one is a larger image with the people in the water at the foot of the bath. This is actually the second structure. The first one burnt down. There were a lot of arsons in La Jolla around that time. So now the next thing is what people wore. And so both men and women needed to be covered. Women wore woolen suits, stockings, and shoes to get that coverage. Men just wore longer suits. And from the late 1920s to mid 1930s, the rules changed, and both men and women could wear lighter weight and more revealing bathing costumes. Now, these women are still wearing their shoes and their stockings, but here the modesty police is measuring the distance between her kneecap and her bathing dress length. And this actually reminds me of like in junior high and high school in the late 60s, early 70s, when we either had to stand with our arms to our sides to show that our skirt lengths were below our fingertips, or we had to get down on our knees and they'd measure from the hem length to the the grounds. I don't know how much this modesty policeman was enjoying that, but I'm sure he probably did. Now, there are different bathhouses for different reasons, and this one is Los Baños in what was, I mean, in downtown San Diego. It's no longer there. And the title is The End of the Line because John D. Spreckles of the Spreckles Sugar family also had owned the trolley line, and he liked to have destinations at the end of the line. And it served two things of having a reason to get people on the trolleys, but also it would cool down the brakes and heat the water in the bathhouse. And the Sutro Baths was another one that was a destination. And this postcard over here shows the side of it out to the bay. And the Sutro Baths were the person who owned the bus trolley line out to the Sutro Baths was actually Adolf Spreckles, the brother of John D., and who later became known by his wife, whose wife coined the term her sugar daddy. So, but Adolf Sutro was a self-made millionaire. He was an engineer who designed safety precautions for the silver mines in Reno, Nevada, around Reno, Nevada. And after he retired and came back to San Francisco, he wanted to give something back to the people of San Francisco. He built what was the baths in 1894, and he loved natural history and marine studies. So here's the Grecian style entry, and people would go in and they could see an aquarium, and natural history things. He also had artifacts from Mexico, China, Asia, and the Middle East, including Egyptian mummies. It's listed as the largest bathhouse in the world, and there were 7 different pools, all saltwater. The pools could fill at high tide in an hour and a half. And the pools were each one, it was kind of like the story of Goldilocks, where you could find the right temperature for yourself between the various pools. This picture here is from Nancy, and it's the promenade level. And this is the main entrance. And over here, after Sutro died in 1898, his family took it over, but by the time, I should say, by the 1930s, they weren't able to make any money, so they turned it into a skating rink and then ended up closing it down. These 2 pictures here are from the area because it burnt down in 1966, and it became part of the Golden Gate National Recreation Area. And there is a park site there at the ruins there. And if you ever go out to San Francisco, I do suggest you go out to Land's End and visit the Sutro area, because it's really interesting. This right here is one of the former baths, and then there are caves off to the side. You could take a tour or else do a self-directed tour. And this one is actually from Detroit. It's a photochrome print, and it is something that Michael Levenstein got real excited about. I had mentioned it to him, and he had never seen one. And so he started spending time on he prefers the Yale University website. I prefer the Library of Congress because I find it easier to get around. So these are extra rich in color. Whereas the postcards are 4-color, these are 8 to 12 color. And down here at the bottom, the number and all are written in gold. We're going back down to Southern California here, to Coronado Tent City. And again, as I said, Spreckles had his fingers in every pie in town. The Hotel Del, he was an investor in it, but he realized as tourism started, once the railroads came through, that the middle class, or people who weren't as wealthy as who could afford to stay at the Hotel Del, that he could get some of the people who wanted to come to the beach for a vacation by building a tent city. And this is a view of what Tent City looks like. They're thatched tents, and this is a view looking down toward the Hotel Del. And right about here at the end of this trolley line was where William Henry Jackson, and that's for Rick because he's so excited about talking about Jackson, had his train car. And he stayed there for a full year. And so a lot of these postcards of the San Diego area were taken by Jackson, if they're from this time period. And so these are the 2 pools that Spreckles had built. One is the children's bathing pool. As you could see, it's like a lot of other kids' pools. Who wants to be in the kids' pool when you can be in the adult pool? And this is the regular bathing pool. They were used, and even though it's right on the bay on one side and on the ocean on the other. So at one point, Dan Sachs asked me if I'd be discussing radiation baths, and my reaction, actually, I didn't say it to him, but was, ew, who would want to do that? And then I went, okay, I'm a cancer patient and I get radiation injections multiple times a year to have scans run. So it's like I willingly get radiation treatments. This one here, the new Imperial Bathhouse in Hot Springs, Arkansas, I had looked up to find out more about it. And what I did find is in Hot Springs, Arkansas, it is a national park, the whole town, because there were multiple bathhouses within the downtown area. So you could go from one to the next to the next. Ashley, are you on the call? Okay.
I am. Yeah, I have that postcard actually.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
And so, have you been to Hot Springs?
Oh yeah, many times. I've taken a bath at one of the bathhouses that's still open.
Uh-huh. Okay,
It's what-
so
Yeah.
go ahead.
Different from the way the ones you're describing that the water came from the ocean. These do come from hot springs,
Right.
volcanically heated water, not volcanically, but
Well,
center of the earth heated water. Yeah. But
what I didn't tell you all is that the Pacific Ocean is incredibly cold. So the water would be cold. And that's why having the trolleys, as they're cooling the brakes, warm up the pools would make a big difference. Now, the Claremore radium pools actually really aren't radium. Now, around that time that these were all built and the movement started, it was when Marie and Pierre Curie discovered the element radium and gave it its name and also coined the word radioactivity. And so people thought, oh, radium, it's going to solve my stomach ailments, my rheumatism, my sinus problems, and relieve all my stress. You know, it's neither here nor there. Now, for the Claremore radium building, a oil digger, this is in Oklahoma, and someone was drilling for oil and instead got this water that stank. And so he claimed that it was radium, but upon testing, it turned out to be sulfur. Now, Richfield Springs is a place near and dear to my heart because I went to graduate school in Cooperstown, New York, and my assigned town to do research at was Richfield Springs. So when I saw this card, it was just like, oh, Richfield. And I don't know if this stack is to heat the water. Although if it's springs, like Ashley was saying, there's probably hot springs underneath the town, or if it's for their laundry to wash the garments and all. And that was another way that people made money, that baths made money, was renting the garments and everything to the bathers. And so after the shift went from the heavy garments to the lighter weight, more revealing garments, they let people just come in their own suits. Now here's, I don't know, to me, this is hauntingly beautiful. And so they're called Ock photochrome prints. And if you, this one, it's easier to see the gold, although this provider saying that Yale University provided it is because Yale purchased a card. But this is the Great Salt Lake. It's no longer there. And if it were, as because the Salt Lake is disappearing, it wouldn't need the stilts. And this one, when Michael first found out about the ox, he had actually purchased a few, and he contacted me and said, why would there be a fancy plunge like this in South Dakota? There's a lot of reasons, because people get dirty everywhere. And it later was called Evans Plunge Bath. And here are some images. These are again Nancy's. So it says here that the plunge bath originally was in 1890. And this card here, I'm saying, was circa 1960 because of the age generation of the cars in the parking lot. Again, because it's a hot springs, it was probably self-heated. We're back to San Diego, and this is from the Panama, California exposition in 1915. One thing was different about the San Diego exposition and the San Francisco, the Panama Pacific exposition in San Francisco the same year, is that San Diego was built on land that was donated to the city, whereas San Francisco's was leased. And people would often just go to both when they were out here on the West Coast. And a couple of the people who visited were the head of the Navy, the head of the Marines, and the top general of the Marines. And they all fell in love with the architecture. But something happened in 1915. That's why I'm sharing the part about the difference between San Diego's exposition and San Francisco, is that a war started in Europe. And so the people who were working at the Panama Pacific Exposition couldn't get home to Europe, and they came down to San Diego, and the exposition turned into a World's Fair for 1916. But at the same time, where it was people were aware that the US was going to be going into the war, they realized that having all these young men who didn't necessarily know how to swim in their ships and things like that, so they added, they took over it's actually the Lily Pool Pond, and it's not very deep. It's maybe 3 to 4 feet, so no one would drown there because all they'd have to do is stand up. The pond is still there. Actually, most of these buildings, even though they were built to be temporary, are still there. This building here became dorms while they were training the recruits to swim. Now, I'm going to just kind of travel through some of the other locations. Let me know if I'm getting a little too wordy, but this is from Revere Beach State Bathhouse in Massachusetts. This one is from Ontario, the Canadian Bathhouse, Crystal Beach, Ontario. A little later, actually, because of the architecture, kind of mid-century. And again, that's from Nancy. And these are from Coney Island. And so it's the Aquadrome Luna Park, Coney Island, and then the Municipal Public Baths, Coney Island, New York. And this one is the St. George Hotel in Brooklyn, swimming pool, natural salt water. This is from Pittsburgh, in the natatorium, the Plunge in Boise, Idaho natatorium. And then this one is from the largest bathhouse on the Great Lakes in Cedar Point, Ohio. They weren't the largest in the world because that was already taken, so they're the largest on the Great Lakes. And I want to thank you, and I do want to give extra thanks, my gratitude and appreciation to Nancy Redden, Dan Sachs, and Michael Langenstein for allowing me to use their postcards and information. And I can now take questions and comments.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is there a difference between bathhouses and public swimming pools back then?
No, what had occurred was that as people got their own baths in their homes, they realized that all the poor people stank. And so they built these pools, plunges, as a way to efficiently bathe people and so people then, they're the same thing,
Okay.
is what I'm trying to say.
What would the water quality be? I mean, because it became just a mass bathtub, a bathtub for thousands of people.
Well,
Did
what
they
they would
change?
do, or some cases 10,000, they would regularly clean the water.
Oh, okay.
And so it might be, every 2 days, it might be, in the case of the Sutro baths, like the water would go out and then they were able to refill the pools
Mm-hmm.
quickly. But in a lot of the other places, it might have been every other day. So it depended on the site as to what occurred. Because chlorine wasn't used then.
They used soap back then? I mean, in the bathing or no?
Well, that could have been what, in the bathhouses where they were, like the ones I showed you in La Jolla and a few other places, or the ones on the lake, they probably did, because those were they didn't have pools in them. They were more changing rooms, so they probably had showers. Some of the sites, like the ones in Hot Springs, Arkansas, a lot of the public baths had tubs rather than pools. And so it was really what the investor put in.
What are the natural territoriums?
They are, okay, I looked it up, but I didn't write it down. It is basically the pools.
Those two cards you showed us that William Henry Jackson took, the photographs. I was just thinking that's quite a journey for him, from photographing being the first one to photograph Civil War dead at Antietam to the American West. Those amazing photographs, and then finally large bathing facilities.
Well, this one here is one of them. And
A wonderful photograph.
Really?
yeah, they really are. You could see his eye because he was a true artist. And these two here. So during his stay in Coronado and in San Diego, he took a lot of images. There were also local photographers who photographed the area.
Mm-hmm.
And so not all of them were taken by Jackson, but these I know were.
What's the history of Tent City?
Well, like I just said, that Spreckels wanted to take advantage of the new rise in tourism as the trains came cross country. And the trains were actually right across the country were very inexpensive. And a lot of the people who moved here from, say, upstate New York, had paid like $1.50 to come across. So it didn't even really cost that much overall. I mean, it would have cost a lot more to take a ship.
Well, or
And
stay at the hotel.
well, they couldn't afford that. So Spreckels, who he came up with the idea, well, we could get those people to stay with us in Tent City. And so there was the trolley car that ran through, there was actually an auditorium and a concert place. And so there was a lot going on here. And in fact, probably more than in the Dell itself. And then at the same time, you know, as I was talking about the, you know, in 1915, in Coronado, in an part of Coronado called North Island, Glenn Curtis set up his airplane area. So I guess Glenn Curtis there was a lot was happening up in your area, and then a lot happening down here.
New York City also had its recreation piers for the poorer people.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I have this card. I'm not sure if you can see it. That's a Detroit
Can you move
card.
it a little toward your head?
Yeah, it's a less common Detroit card of people sitting on the recreation pier. There are also swimming, floating pools at these recreation piers.
Yeah. What's the number on that one?
8983. It's copyright 1905. Yeah, I'll send you a scan of that.
Okay, great. And I have my contact information right here on my.
Well, I've also got it because you're part of the San Jose Club.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Cedar Point's a huge amusement park now, apparently.
Oh, is that where it is?
Yeah. It's near, I think it's near Cleveland.
Closer to Sandusky.
And
Oh,
Dusky.
Sandusky. Okay. So it's past Cleveland. Silver Bay on Lake George is a YMCA resort center,
Mhm.
and it's it's very nice.
Mm.
It's less affordable than it used to be, but it is very nice.
Do they still have a pool, Rick?
No, now you just go in the lake. They've worked very hard at keeping Lake George clean, and they inspect boats before they go in the water because of zebra mussels,
Mhm.
and people have to spend a lot of money to clean up their septic systems, and so far it's worked. The lake is very clean, and crystal clear. Property values there are also astronomical.
I bet.
It's like Beverly Hills. It really
Or
is.
just anywhere in San Diego County.
Oh, okay.
An added note on Silver Bay, that was where where James Sumner Wolway made a lot of his original postcards. He's a very, very popular, his real photo postcards are quite popular and quite and equally sought after. I don't know if you're familiar with Wolway, but his cards are beautiful. And there's a book that was recently came out with a number of his images. I think I
And
can.
then just south of Silver Bay was the home of the photographer Alfred Stieglitz.
Yeah, he's another good one.
Yeah, and about 15 or 20 years ago, people wanted better cell phone service. And the telephone company said, well, if we put a tower on top of this certain mountain, everyone will get good cell phone service. But the one thing that stopped it was they realized that Georgia O'Keeffe, who was married to Stieglitz, had painted this mountain many times, obviously without a cell phone tower on it.
Mm.
And they ended up not putting up the cell phone tower there.
Wow.
There's a number of books available on the photographers of postcards of Adirondack region and that whole area around Lake George and Lake Champlain, Adirondack Mountains. Seneca Ray Stoddard, his career, they produced some postcards in the later years. You can almost do a whole program on different of just the North Country, and I guess the water was usually too cold for people to want to go in, so they'd usually float around boats.
At the bathhouses in California, I know the water is very cold in the Pacific. Did people just go in anyway? And
Yeah, you saw the ones of, winter bathing.
yeah,
And I was just thinking, okay, it's typically, although we're starting to get very warm water
Mm.
here now. But when even 10 years ago, having it be in the middle of summer above 65 was rare.
Wow.
geez. This is because of the current that comes down along the coast.
Yeah.
Okay.
At least I think so. Yeah, it comes down from the north, and
Mhm.
it's like the first time I went to the East Coast and we were landing in New York.
Mm.
And I looked down and it was like, there's snow on the beach. How could that be?
Mm.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yesterday, Rick, you had said to me, oh, well, it could be warm in October and, who knows? And when I was at Cooperstown, that was my first winter of my life.
Yeah.
And it was really mild in the fall. And then it just snowed and snowed and snowed and snowed and snowed.
Yeah.
And that was the year that Jimmy Buffett wrote his song, they're freezing up in Buffalo.
Yeah.
And so that was my first winter ever.
Mm.
And so, but as I was told when I was back for my interview, that the first one's always the most difficult.
Mm.
And then I lived in Denver for a long time, and you just get used to it. I mean, but Denver's a very different climate than central New York State.
We know Buffalo sometimes the storms they usually get very early because Lake Erie is so warm still. But one day, the Buffalo newspaper, I don't know what else happened in the world at the time, but all of that was put to page 2, 3, and 4. The headline was that the storm Buffalo had gotten the day before was exactly as deep as the quarterback of the Buffalo Bills football team was tall. And this just this was the news. I mean, this was it.
Here, we got more on January 22nd, a date that I'm not going to forget. We got like 5 inches of rain in 1 hour,
Mm.
Jeez.
which is totally unusual. And no one was prepared for it. I just looked down. I live on the 2nd floor of my apartment building, and I looked down, and there was a large pond, small lake in the complex parking lot next door. And coming down from the street it looked like a river. And my car didn't survive.
Yeah, when you have a slow moving storm, that's what happens.
And
That's why
especially
you want a
because if
storm
the
like that to move
county or the
quickly.
city doesn't take care of their storm drains, it
Oh,
all
yeah.
backs up. So anyway, I digressed from the bathing. So
But you're right, people didn't bathe on a regular basis. It just wasn't.
no, and in fact, they started, the various bathing places in Europe started long before they did here. Here it was really the whole thing of the Civil War, teaching them about how hygiene matters and how it helps to have.
The Roman had a bath.
Right,
houses,
exactly.
And they were going for bathing, not for swimming necessarily.
Mhm.
Right. But see, this is more efficient because the whole thing. So the Japanese also did baths. The Romans, the Orthodox Jews to this day still have baths. Oh, and Turkey, the Middle East have their baths, but it's a very different thing than these things. They spent a lot of money on the public baths. And so it was all about how to efficiently bathe the public.
Was that sutro, the exterior of the sutro, that was Middle Eastern looking?
It was Grecian.
Oh, that was Grecian?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Roseanne, this is Bill Edwards.
Hi, Bill.
Hi there. Thank you very much for that discussion.
Oh, thank you.
It's an example of, once again, how vernacular photographs so beautifully illustrate aspects of our cultural heritage that many of us knew very little about, if at all. And it was very enlightening. And thank you for bringing that forward to me. I'm going to sign off right now, but thanks for doing this presentation.
Well, I want to thank you for, in your previous lifetime, having created such wonderful archival materials.
Oh, thank you very much.
Rosanne, it's Ashley. It's a very interesting presentation for sure. And it helps me understand when I've seen these postcards of these big bathing pools and bathing houses. Hadn't really given them a whole lot of thought, but I really am glad to have learned more about the reasons and the mechanisms and all of it. So it's really interesting. And of course, to see the beautiful cards. So thanks.
Oh, well, thank you.
Mm.
And it also, it's interesting that Postcards even documented these changes in personal hygiene. A whole nother aspect of our society, that people, we started to offer people a chance to bathe
Mhm.
in a way that, you know, they probably would not be able to do at home. And they made postcards of it. I mean, there's like,
And they sold a lot of them too.
yeah, people suddenly decided it's kind of nice to be clean. You know, it's nice to
Well,
submerge in the water.
Mm.
as I was developing this, I kept thinking about, in the book, The Grapes of Wrath, when they come out from Oklahoma to Central California, they discovered showers
Yeah.
and they wanted to shower every day.
Well, Roseanne, thank you very much. That was very
Thank you
interesting.
very much,
Never
Roseanne.
seen any of those
Thank
cards
you.
before. That was very good.